Thank you. I'm waiting for my crew. We good? Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call the village board meeting for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 to order with roll call, please.
Collier,
Here.
Stefani,
Here.
McAlpine,
Here.
Walrath,
Here.
Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We are canceling our executive session for this evening. And moving past that, we are going to move to the open forum where the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. I have nobody signed in. Is there anybody here who would like to address the village board? We'll go ahead and close open forum at 5:01. I have one proclamation this evening for parks. National Recreation and Parks Month, July 2023, whereas parks and recreation are integral parts of the communities throughout the country, including the Village of Cary and the Cary Park District. And whereas parks and recreation promotes time spent in nature, which positively impacts both physical and mental health by increasing cognitive performance and well-being. And whereas parks and recreation encourages physical activities by providing space for popular sports, hiking trails, swimming pools, and any other activities designed to promote active lifestyles. And whereas park and recreational programming and education activities such as out-of-school time programming, youth sports, and environmental education are critical to childhood development. And whereas recreation increases a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of local sales tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas the United States House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreations Month. Therefore, I, Mark Koenig, Mayor of the Village of Cary, do hereby proclaim July as Recreation and Parks Month in the Village of Cary and encourage all citizens to celebrate healthy, active lifestyles by participating in their choice of recreation and park activities. Dated this 20th day of June, 2023. Trustee reports. Anything? None said. I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through J as shown on the village's website and as displayed on the video monitor during the village board meeting.
Second. So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
McAlpine,
Yes.
Collier,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Stefani,
Yes.
Thank you. Administrator support. Administrator Morimoto.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one reminder, due to the Independence Day holiday on July 4th, our next board meeting will be canceled at that date, and the next one after that will be July 18th. And then kind of rolling into part of the department reports, we will have Economic Development Specialist Dan Gardner giving an update to the village board this evening as well.
Thank you. Department reports. Chief Finland.
Just a reminder, because of the cancellation of the early July board meeting, that our National Night Out will be August 3rd, which is a Thursday, from 6 to 8, and there'll be no conflict with the village board meeting on the first Tuesday in August.
Thank you, Chief. Deputy Director Stein.
Yeah, I have a couple of items. The first is the Water Conservation Ordinance. I believe it was last meeting that was vote was made to change from the old levels, you know, the green, yellow, red, and the new ordinance is green will be on odd even days for watering, and then the yellow is odd even from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m., and then red in both cases was no watering whatsoever. We will be moving to the yellow condition July 3rd is our plan. We're going to be putting out some public notices and I think an ad in the paper for that. Part of that, the main reason is with the extended dry weather we're having. I believe last week they moved us into the not extreme drought, but I forget how they called it, but it's enough that it's gone up from, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on what the different terms are, but we're doing that. Also, along with that, is as you're all aware, we plan on painting our Tower 4. That has been something that's been a lot of different issues. T-Mobile is currently working to take their equipment off of the tower, and you'll see the temporary over there. Our contractor, our painting contractor, is scheduled to be here after July 4th holiday. To accommodate that, we have to take that tower offline, empty it, because it's getting totally redone inside and out. With that, the water system for that area, if you're aware, Cary has 3 separate zones that have been developed in that zone, which is basically a line of 3 Oaks Road, Georgetown, everything west, Main Street, everything south of Main Street, west of Cary Algonquin Road down to Fox Trails. That's all the same pressure zone. We will be operating, this will be a new one for me, and I think of all the employees working here. It hasn't been taken offline for more than 20 years. It's going to be a challenge for us. We anticipate those areas will see lower water pressure from time to time, not any lower than other areas of town. The older section of town has a lower 35 to 40 PSI range, where these areas over here have a upper 50s to low 60s pressure range. They're probably going to see it depending on where Tower 3, which is the tower on South Algonquin Road, in the operation. As we adjust things, they might see a 10 PSI difference from what they're typically used to. Coupled in with the extreme drought, we've been moving a lot more water through our system. Normally we do about a 1.4 million gallon a day. We've been seeing that double. Typically, we've been averaging the past week about 2.7 million a day, which is well over 1 million more gallons a day demand on our system, which we're fine. But just to let you know, your constituents may be contacting you. I'm sure they'll be contacting us once we make that adjustment on the tower. We're going to do everything we can to keep the water pressure like it is, but I can't say that it's going to be that 60 PSI for the 60 days while the tower is offline.
How long is the tower going to take?
It is a 60-day contract, start to finish, with a limit of the tower being offline for 50 days.
Okay.
Now, I think there's 10 days built into that for inclement weather. Obviously, we can't paint it if it's raining, but that's the time frame.
Okay. Will all the interior work be done first and then the exterior, or will they do it?
It depends on the weather. If it's raining, they could still work on the inside. There are, of that price to fix the tower, a good, probably, as I recall, it was like $573,000, I believe, with the options of the painting scheme we went with. Over $100,000 of that are structural improvements to the tower itself to bring it up to code. Ladders, manways, hatches, things like that. There's also now, there's going to be a mixer inside that tower. It looks like a big fan blade that'll be underwater that keeps the water mixed to just keep the chlorine and things equally distributed through the water, because as you know, that tower fills up and down, it never empties. So the water at the top could be, as they say, at the water age. This is going to help with things like that, new requirements. So there are quite a few improvements that they'll be working on. The ironwork and things like that can continue, especially inside when it's raining. So.
Thank you, John.
Okay, you're welcome.
Dan, are we hearing from you at this point? Dan Gardner, our Economic Development Specialist.
There we go.
There we go.
Just like being on a Zoom call. So I just wanted to catch up on some of the things I've been working on, and specifically following up on the ICSC conference that took place back in May. So as many of you know, the conference, I'll start with that. It used to be called the International Council of Shopping Centers, but everybody knows it as ICSC. And it is an organization that is an international organization with chapters all over. I frequently go to events and participate in the Chicago area events, but once a year there's a national conference, and it's always held in Las Vegas. there was some downtime, obviously, with COVID, where it was done remotely and things were down. But this year was the first year really where it was really big, back up and running full steam. There were 24,000 attendees from all over the world, mostly national. But that combined group was brokers, developers, retailers, restaurateurs, municipalities. City of McHenry had 4 people there. They had a booth there. I was a sole attendee from here, and it really worked, in my opinion, better if you don't have somebody that can kind of man a spot to be able to navigate and meet with people. I was setting up meetings months in advance with contacts that I had and people that I knew that were going to be attendees there. Once you're registered, you have access to the full attendee list, and as people register, then you can make contacts. So I was making contacts. People were reaching out to me that I've known to find out if I was going to be there, and so had a lot of follow-up conversations then that took place both before, during, and then after the meetings. Everybody that attends doesn't necessarily go to the convention center, which is kind of one of those things that you kind of figure out as you're there. There's a lot of events, like CBRE hosts a big event, networking events. So those are done, more or less off-site, and anybody who's invited then can network with the group there. And those are really really fruitful because you get kind of one-on-one time with people, or you meet groups of people and getting an opportunity to kind of lay things out. And I've done a lot of follow-up with those contacts. So I literally had a stack. I was counting the number of contacts that I had, and it was like 124 contacts that I've put into a database that I'm following up with and have had communications with. One of the things that we worked on before the event, and much thanks to Courtney for pulling this together, was a handout that I've also have a link to. I'm going to pass out a copy of it just so you kind of see this, because it's also really valuable, not just for the conference, although we produced it for the conference. There it goes. Oh, there we go. Just want to see what I got here. And this was a marketing piece, building off of previous things that the village had produced that predate me, and then updating with current demographic information, market information, just got the available sites, because that becomes a big thing when you're pushing this, whether or not it's at a conference like this or just the things that I do on a day-to-day basis of selling the village. And that is sometimes to somebody just looking the Crystal Lake, Algonquin, Cary, Fox River Grove, just more of a specified focus. And sometimes you're looking at regional, the whole Chicago region, and sometimes you're looking at the Midwest and the country for people that are looking for sites. And that's the type of thing, and just in a conference like this, where you're talking to people and coming across people that you didn't even know existed. So give you an example. In addition to the traditional retailers and restaurant groups and people, and when you're in the convention center, some of these restaurants and business, they basically like rebuild their restaurant in the footprint of the convention center. And it's amazing, just the amount of investment that goes into a conference like this, and it's extremely worthwhile. And then there's others that you've never, like I said, there's concepts like the chicken and pickle that I think I've forwarded to you before, that is a growing concept, and it's building. There is this growing momentum of combining entertainment, recreation, and restaurant bar type of concepts. And that even extends to then the company called, it was a dog park. It was called Bark, with a B-A-R and then a K separate. And it's basically just almost self-explanatory. It's a bar dog park looking for sites. So you have these kind of concepts like this that are interesting and growing in popularity, and then being able to sit down with them and show them, here's our demographics, here's the sites we have available, and here's what we can do. And then there's also just even hoteliers. So it met with couple hotel groups, and one of the things that resonates, you're always trying to find something that sets you apart when you're marketing to, especially when you're competing in a regional level. And so I had a number of people say, oh, they saw the name tag, Village of Cary, oh, no, North Carolina. I'm like, no, that's, first of all, let's start there. And then, surprisingly, people that are familiar with Cary are more often than not, I'm telling people about Cary and proximity and some of the things that are immediately accessible on the train line, the distance from Chicago, the kind of triangle of Rockford, Milwaukee, Chicago, where it's positioned. But when you say it's within 15 miles from where the Chicago Bears are building their new proposed stadium, that resonates with people, even if it's, not, it's still in the very early stages, but, this process of recruiting businesses and bringing people and generating interest is a long process sometimes. And, and getting, just because they have to go through their due diligence periods. So some of these conversations I've been having have been multiple conversations that preceded the conference or just had nothing to do with the conference. But when you talk to like a hotel developer or even somebody like Chicken and Pickle or places like that, and then you bring up just the proximity and just that it's a direct shot to where the Bears are proposed stadium, that resonates, and that's a selling point, and I'm going to stick with it and for as until the stadium is built or we hear otherwise, because it does, like I said, it is kind of an iconic reference point. In addition to just the positive factors that we have to work with here. I have site criteria and site requirements from, like I said, being 100 different end users, conversations with people that specialize just in doing development adjacent to Walmarts. So you get the specialty level of these conversations is really interesting. I prepared a handout as you see. So this is just part of the day-to-day operate. The typical process really involves around reaching out or fielding contacts or learning who's active in the market, reaching out to those connections, learning what their site criteria are, what their needs, what their kind of co-locating issues are, showcasing the sites that we have to work with and the data, and keeping that data fresh, and then the follow-up, as I said, it's constant follow-up. There's a process that everybody's going through, and it's a very competitive environment. But we've got a lot to show and a lot to showcase. From a non-commercial standpoint, one of the things that we're seeing a lot of interest, and I even had this feedback, the ICSE conference, which, again, going back to that acronym, they're generally going by the acronym name, but it's kind of funny is that they backed into the acronym because everybody knows the acronym. But International Council of Shopping centers are pretty much irrelevant and being repositioned and changing. So they backed into the acronym and called it Innovative Commerce Serving Communities. But nobody knows it as that, and so they're now just kind of just going straight with the acronym. But given that this is even just a very commercial-focused event, there were discussions about residential and just how residential density and residential is driving a lot of these developments. And I mentioned that Walmart firm that does development proximate to Walmart, they wanted to reposition existing built environments. So just the site that we have on 31 wasn't a site that they thought they could make work, but they thought, hey, bring in residential. We don't do residential, but we think this would be a good site for residential. That's kind of how some of the narrative is changing, and there's a little bit of a paradigm shift in how residential and proximity to development and what typically had been a commercial corridor or considered a commercial corridor is now changing to the residential density. And that's, the good news is when you hear that in some communities, it's on a, maybe a lower scale, if you will, housing product, but most people feel that Cary is positioned for an upscale or at least, a higher end product, residential, multifamily, attached single family like townhomes, rental product, but on a higher level. So I've had these conversations not just on a commercial level, but also with residential developers, single family, multifamily developers. And, that's also part of what we see with, as you know, with Maplewood and just the interest in development in the village. So other things I've been working on, including the TIF, been actively involved in working with staff and the village's TIF consultant, working on the Maplewood Road extension with HDR, the village's engineering consultant on that study. The streetscape project, I've been involved in that, and then also being the liaison kind of more or less on some of the issues, which reaching out and working with the area businesses to make sure that some of the impacts are mitigated, not totally eliminated, but at least mitigated and addressed as they come up that are inevitable. And then just ongoing contacts, try to circle back with everybody as often as possible and reach out and let them know to reach out to me. Eric, Brian, and staff have a lot on their plates on a day-to-day basis. So whenever I can step in to kind of be that liaison, that's part of my role. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on. Happy to answer any questions, or if you think of something after the meeting tonight and you want to reach out, please feel free to do so.
Anybody have any questions? If you guys ever have any opportunities that you want to sit down and talk to Dan one-on-one,
Absolutely.
with myself or Eric, we can make that happen. Right, thank you, Dan, I appreciate it.
You bet.
One thing that Director Morimoto would like to remind us at.
Apologize. One more on our end. Dan reminded me, the Maplewood Access Road Phase 1 study that is underway. Our consultants and staff will be holding a public open house meeting for that project. An opportunity to view some exhibit boards, see some alternatives, and kind of see where the direction of the study is going. We're looking to get public feedback at an open house style meeting, so you can come anytime between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. on July 12th. So we'll advertise that more on our typical channels of Cary News Weekly, our website, and so forth. I just wanted to give a sneak preview that that's the date we'll be holding that meeting.
Thank you. Any future agenda items in discussion by village board? None said. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 5:23.